Welcome back to another episode of Torque. So today we're going to remove the inner rocker and the torque box out of the passenger side of the 1965 Mustang convertible. This is going to be extremely time consuming, and I'll try and be as detailed as I possibly can. So let's head out to the barn and get to work. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and start removal of the inner rockers. I'm going to try and start on this passenger side. First thing I'm going to do is take off this torque box area, this frame piece, and then we're going to see inside of it, see where the inner rockers actually land, see what we have to access to remove those in the forward section. When you're doing all these spot welds, make sure you get a good spot weld cutter. I've used these Blair cutters for years, and these things work really well. They're not the cheapest thing, but they do last a long time. So let's go ahead and start on these torque boxes. All right, well, our Mustang expert and our Mustang source, same guy, brought over, these are two repop doors. They look a lot better than the original ones. They're just so hammered up. So we're going to see if those things will work. He also brought over a quarter panel, but you know, we've got two brand new ones. We're going to find out which one will actually fit a little bit better, and also an NOS fender, and he may have two repops for those as well. So we're going to wait and see about that. But I started taking apart a little bit of the torque box area, and what a mess this is. What a pain in the butt. So here's the torque box, you can see, and it fits right up inside of here. Okay, so I guess you guys get a little bit of the idea. I had to cut where the tacks were on the outside. This panel was so bad that it started to pull apart. So I just cut around it because I'm going to have to fabricate a little piece there at the bottom. But one thing that's really strange about this, it'd almost be better if it came in pieces. This actually, there was a piece right here, and it had a little tab that came off right there, and that was part of this frame section. When I put it in a new one, there's no way to actually put the tab on, but I can, when the floor is out, I can put a tab on and then weld it straight to the torque box. You can see all the different flanges that you're going to have to drill out. This is time consuming. I bet I have 3 hours into just removing this. So I've got to sand down the hood and the trunk, get it ready for epoxy primer. So I'm going to do that first, and then I'll come back and we'll start working this inner rocker again. I'm going to try and brace up here. Instead of trying to get this on stands, I'd love for it to stay on the rotisserie. And I believe with the outer rocker in place, I bet there's going to be enough stiffness into this, along with this fire wall piece that's kind of on the engine side. So I'll brace this from up here where it's welded on straight down to the outer rocker. I think that's going to hold it in place. I am going to have to try and take off the seat pan, the upper seat pan, and then that way I can get to everything around the inner rocker. All right, so this piece to the subframe was rusted up. You can see how badly pitted it is. So use anything you possibly can to try and get this off. It's hard to see where the welds are at just because it's so pitted. So I'm using an air hammer with a chisel bit to try and get this up. Definitely take your time, and you'll see I'm going to make up another section for this. We'll weld it in, and it will look good as new. Okay, the first thing that I always do is try and get a regular shape. So you can see I cut that little piece out into a triangle. I already made a piece to go in there. I'm going to tack this in. I'll get it welded completely in. Then I'll start cutting this out into probably a square, and I'll get that in. It'll look good as new, and it'll be just as strong. This metal's just a little bit thicker. That's about 65 thousandths. This is a little over 80. It won't really matter. It's going to be flush on the outside. All right, I went ahead and welded in those little patch pieces. They're completely welded in. I actually wire wheeled everything so I can spray it with some weld-through primer. I made up a new patch piece out of, it's about 80 thousandths, 85 thousandths. I'll go ahead and weld that in, and I'll sand that down, and you'll never know. Plus the torque box will be in here covering this area up, so it'll be just as strong as factory, and it should work pretty well. All right, you can go ahead and see that I've welded in most of it. I'm still doing the plug welds. I've got a few more plug welds to do, and then I'm done with this patch, and it looks pretty good. All right, I went ahead and took out the seat pan. There are exactly 50 spot welds on this seat pan. And then the toughest part was they edge welded here and here over on the tunnel both sides, and then also on the inner rockers. So that was the toughest part to actually get apart. Then it pulled straight out. The floor pan on this side actually looks to be in pretty good shape. Floor pan on the other side is, of course, it's got some more rust on it. There was some mouse nests in there, so I'm sure that contributed to it. I also, you can see I cut out a little bit of this, the floor pan, and this was pretty rotted anyway. We're going to have to do the same here. I already have patch panels, but in order for me to get this inner rocker off, this has got to be detached from the inner rocker. So we're going to get to that. And we're also going to start taking off this, some of the support. We're going to have to try and take that weld out, and then also this brace here. So we'll go ahead and get started on that, and I'll show you guys the progress. What we're going to do right now is we're going to go ahead and cut off a section of this. Since it's in a U-channel, I won't be able to peel back this metal. So I'm going to cut all this off, and it's just going to leave the strip that has all the spot welds in, and then maybe I'll be able to take and peel that off. So let's go ahead and use a plasma cutter and cut some of this stuff apart. So you can see that I've got it's almost a flat surface. I can peel off one, then peel off the other layer. Hopefully that will work, because I want to keep this outer rocker in place. I also just welded a support here. So if this outer rocker decides to sag, should support it and keep it in place. Should also keep it from twisting. So we'll see how that turns out. All right, I used the plasma cutter and cut some more of the inner rocker. Even though this thing was dipped, this stuff, this rust gets inside of these cavities, and it just will not go away. So look at this cavity. Look at the pile of rust that's in there. So I'm going to keep on going backwards. First I'm going to cut off this lower part of the inner rocker and trim back the floor. We've got full floors, just sections, but they're full sections, and we'll keep on working back till we can get this inner rocker out. All right, so we keep on whittling away a little bit at a time, and then of course this is the inner rocker right here. This is the flat piece. We're cutting off the piece that comes back around, comes inside. So I do have both sets of metal to actually take out here, the inner rocker, and then the straight piece that's on the outer part of the inner rocker. So you can see I'm getting to the tough area, and I'm just going to whittle a little bit of away at a time, because I'm trying to keep these all in place. I don't want to have to take these off, because this is what's actually holding up the back end of the car. So I'm gonna have to keep on whittling away and then I'm gonna have to try and peel away these two layers as we go. All right, I want to show you guys. So this angle piece that actually stiffens up, you know, the back and the floor right there, it actually curves up underneath and is welded inside. So I cut along right here, right along the side. If this piece of floor is good, then I'll just, when I get the new inner rocker in, I will just push this back in and then weld that seam, and it'll be fine. This thing was filled up with rust. I'll show you guys a picture of that. These things are just terrible, and you can see the inner part of the outer part of the inner rocker was rusted through as well. Hopefully the outer rocker is still pretty sound from the outside. It looks pretty good, but we'll just have to wait and see. So now I'll have to go ahead and try and take this all apart, take off this whole inner rocker. This is going to be time consuming. I'll try and show you guys step by step. All right, so we're at the back of the inner rocker, and I've used the little panel separating knife. I cut this off a little bit. I can always put another flange on here, and then I cut a little bit of this flange as well. I'm trying to keep all this intact because the subframe does come down and attaches to this. You can see that I also cut the lower panel inside to give me more access. I thought this was going to be a little bit tougher. It is going to take a little bit to get the inside, but for this I'm going to go down underneath, and I'll show you that in a minute. Separate that from where the suspension hooks up on the forward side, and then I have just the area that goes to the inner wheelhouse. I'll be able to cut that, and then I can start on these panels over here. So this is time consuming. Don't rush through this. You don't want to damage something that you can't reverse. Just take your time. All right, so this is looking underneath. This is of course where the suspension will hook up. It's got all kinds of brackets. There's a big bracket that comes along the outside, and that hooks into or welds to that inner rocker right there. So I'm going to take and cut this off and try and get to the, if there's any spot welds here, try and get to those, and then I'll be able to separate this lower part of the inner rocker and the inner portion of the inner rocker. Then I'll just have that wall on the outside. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and start removing this metal. That's the flange for the inner rocker, the innermost part, and then also the centerpiece. I'm going to take it one layer at a time. So I'm going to cut this in the center, and then I'm going to start peeling away both of these layers one at a time. I know it's going to be a little bit more time consuming, but I want to try and save as much of this outer rocker and not damage it at all. So let's go ahead and start removing this. Alright, so I got the first step done. You remember that there was the piece that was up here that was part of the inner rocker. Well, I've got that peeled up all the way across. You can see it's peeled off all the way across. So now I'll do the lower. Then what I'll probably do is try and split this outer piece and do the same thing. I'll cut it in half down here and right in the center, and try and peel it up as well. It looks like the gauge of the outer rocker is just a little bit thinner, so I know that that's going to bend a little bit, but I'll try and cut these spot welds as best as I can. You can see a lot of the areas that you need to cut, so we'll just press on. We'll try and get this lower off, and then I'll show you guys after that, and then I'll show you when I start taking off this outer piece. I went ahead and used my spot weld cutter. There are 40 spot welds running across that. So that's going to take you a while. It's taken me a while to get to all these. I think I went deep enough that I got to that inside piece. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut this right down the center, and then I'll try and start peeling it up this way and peeling it the opposite way. Let's see if this will work. All right, so you can see since I drilled back from the outside, it actually separated most of this panel. You can see it's just loose in the bottom, which is a great thing. So I'll continue on the other side. I'll keep going forward, try and get this piece off, and I'll loosen up, this whole bottom section. All right, so I wasn't so lucky with this side. Part of it detached, part of it stayed attached to the outer rocker, but we'll get that later on. What I'm going to try and do now is I'm going to take the plasma cutter. I'm going to cut this in half. I'll have to use my cutoff wheel, make sure I don't go through the metal on the outside. Cut this in half, and I'm going to peel one section off at a time. I will cut it off in the middle as well, and so then I'll have 4 sections. It'll be a little bit easier to take apart once we get these out, and then it's just clean it up and get ready to install the new one. So hopefully we can get that done pretty quickly. All right, so I got that flat plate off. Looking inside of the outer rocker, it is in really, really good shape. That's amazing since the inner rocker was rusted away so badly. I still have, I'll try and turn this around a little bit. I still have a little bit more to do. I still have this plate to pull out. You can see, because I cut this in 4 pieces, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm drilling out some more of the spot welds, and I'll work my way forward and try and get this up. Afterwards, I'll clean this up, and I'll show you guys what I use to put over stuff like that, and it works really well. All right, so I got the inside of the outer rocker cleaned up as much as I could. I did use some of that, more of that fast etch. That stuff worked pretty good. And I got off as much surface as I could, rust, and I still had a little bit of pitting in there. It was pretty minor, so I am going to coat the whole inside with this stuff called Rust Bullet. I don't know if you guys have ever used this stuff. This stuff works outstanding. You have to put 2 coats of this stuff on. I actually put it on an old milk jug, put it on our porch for 4 years. It never rusted. So this stuff works outstanding. Once I get it all coated inside, I will use some etching primer, some weld-through etching primer on the edges. I will fit that inner rocker, try and get it best as I can, but that's going to be on the next episode, as I've used too much time on this one. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something, and I hope to see you on another episode of Torqued.